welcome to Your Next Chapter, where we spotlight the creators shaping the future of podcasting. I'm Jeremiah Tittle. People call me JT. I'm the CEO of Next Chapter Podcasts. We're now turning our attention to how live events are shaping this next chapter of the podcast industry. And as someone dreaming up my own podcast event in my hometown, I'm excited to sit down with others in the industry to explore what's possible when audio meets real life connection. And my guest today, I'm really excited about Dr. Chioke I'Anson, Director of Community Media at the Institute for Contemporary Art at Virginia Commonwealth University and the founder of the Resonate Podcast Festival. Just a few weeks ago in early November, Chioke and the ICA welcomed hundreds of audio professionals from around the world to Richmond, including our executive producer, Emily Reeves, to the festival's fourth annual event. So she is very excited coming in hot off of that. And I am also excited to be talking to Chioke today because, Resonate has been growing in terms of, I think, the attention and the opportunities for people to network. And I know there was some close podcast friends of mine who were there, including Dane Cardiel. I want to get into some of the details around about his launch there, but I'm curious about how the festival is evolving. So all that is going into this conversation, including Resonate's new partnership with my close friends at Tink Media on the Pitch Party podcast.
Yeah, man, it's good to be here. What city are you in?
So I did say hometown. I didn't mention it specifically. I am definitely a digital nomad and have moved to Spain. I'm in Ibiza currently, a long way from Alexandria, Virginia, where I was born. But the pandemic forced me. Actually, I pulled the pandemic escape hatch, and then I never went back to the mainland United States since.
And you're trying to do a podcast event in Ibiza.
That is my goal. It is something that on this season of the podcast, I've been asking people who have experience, such as yourself, building a live event to find out, like, what should I be thinking about now? What should I be prepared for? And should I even do it in the first place?
That's the main question.
I have a few things to get to before that, but we could totally tackle that first if you want to.
Oh, yeah. No, let's think about it. I mean, why do you want to do an event?
I think the reason it's really been calling me is because I feel like there's something unique about this island. Like I have this feeling that it's a destination place. So people think of it as clubbing, et cetera, but there's also a very large contingent of like health and well-being. It's not all clubbing and partying and stuff. There's a lot of people that really care about like spirituality and I think alternative wellness in particular is something that really in the podcasting space, those two are like quite a strong match because you don't really have that in mainstream radio or media very much. It's something that podcasting it has really thrived in. So I just feel like there's an opportunity there based on who's already here and who comes here, specifically kind of looking for maybe the non-clubbing experience.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, look, the way that it often seems to me is that the location counts for most of everything in terms of a podcast event. So it's like you have to review the location and then determine what kind of event you can have given the location that you have, given the space that is available and that whole thing. And so I think that you're making the right move by taking notice of who the people are who are currently coming to Ibiza. And it might be the case that you can work from there to a kind of experience that involves audio that someone might be motivated to pay for. I would probably just start small, though. Maybe it would be like the Ibiza audio retreat. And it has all of the stuff that you always get when you go there in terms of the wellness thing you're talking about. But then it has this added kind of element of audio. Maybe it's live recordings of therapy sessions, or maybe there's documentarians walking around, the place getting audio from people. So I think that there's a version of an event that can happen with you that's not necessarily a conference. Maybe it's not a festival, but it's like an experience where audio accentuates the thing that's already happening in Ibiza. That's what it's looking like just from the couple minutes of what you said.
I love this. This is like what usually we like build up and we ask you all these questions about your background, et cetera. And we'll get to some of that for sure. But like, at the end of this thing and why we discussed like this season focusing on this is because I've just met a bunch of people, and just as I've discovered, I've been here for about a year off and on as I applied for a visa, et cetera. And yeah, just the more people I meet, the more I'm like, this is a very unique place,
Mm-hmm.
not and I have been told, it hasn't been confirmed yet, that there will be direct flights coming from New York, Miami, maybe Chicago before long. And so I was like, okay, there might be something to this, but I really appreciate your advice with respect to don't go big out the gate, like start small and prove the concept in I don't know, 50-person group, 15-person group, something small that if there is there.
Exactly. I mean, anything you do that's small, if it works, more people will come. Right? So you can do a small thing with 15, 20 people that can backfire spectacularly, and then you can just start something else, right? So like you definitely don't go big at first, especially because you also got to figure out who your partners are, what the actual costs are, who would be down for this foolishness in the first place. Like these are all questions that you have to settle. And so it's about like finding a vision that you can present to, maybe there's an event space on the island that doesn't necessarily get as much business. Maybe there's a time of year where people don't come as much. And here you come saying, oh, well, this actually could be a professional development opportunity. That's also about wellness. That's also about this other stuff. And then you can find these potential partners, right? I mean, like how many of these wellness apps are there? There's so many now, Insight Timer, Calm, etc. And so that could either be a partner or it could just be a place like on Insight Timer where you could locate some of the audience that wants to come and do this kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love Insight Timer. That's my go-to app for meditation and stuff. And I love music too. I don't want to paint the picture that I'm just like some perfect clean living. I love going out and seeing some of the best DJs that come to this island as well. But you're so right in terms of the off season and the north where I live, which is like the country more compared to like what everybody's, I think the outside world kind of pictures when they think of Ibiza. They think of the huge clubs and the spectacle of it all. But yeah, there's a whole other side to it that I've been discovering over, this adventure over the last year plus, since last July when I moved here. And I think people really appreciate it once they see it, once they go to like this random beach where there's like no one there. And it's like, I mean, you go for a swim and you're like, I'm by myself here. And it's, I mean, it's getting, a little bit more chilly this time of year. And that's also when the cost would go down if you were going to rent something or have some type of an event here. So yeah, I think starting small, that's really wise. And also, yeah, starting in the time that is not like crazy busy and expensive, to be able to like prove it out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that another question is like, is this an aesthetic experience or is this a professional experience?
That's a great question.
Right.
I think that's a good question to ask myself. I don't have the answer for it at the moment. I think like I do feel that there are a lot of people who have a lot to teach or content to create here, like a lot of creative people, artists, musicians all over the place here. Like everyone's a DJ. My old neighbor used to say, I was like, is this guy a DJ? They're like, look around, everyone, all your neighbors are DJs. So there's that. And that doesn't mean they're all meant to be podcasters for sure. But I do feel like if they had a producer like me and my background in radio, etc., that that I could take them to the next level or whatever. And yeah, does it feed Next Chapter Podcast? Does it feed the business to have some local clients potentially? That's a an offshoot of that I don't want to pretend is not a part of the agenda here, but I'm mostly focused on like, how do we get people together, or how do we like strengthen, or how do we draw people to the island that could discover, I don't know, it's just kind of a magical place.
No, I feel that. I mean, I definitely feel like start with a retreat, like
Mm-hmm.
invite some audio people. You know how like Jasmine and them in Berlin or whatever have the Echo, right? It's like start with some like a retreat where people, European makers, can gather there and maybe make some stuff and put together some media and start the producer story of going there. And at the same time, you try and build out what it would look like for the regular kind of vacationing set to encounter audio first productions there. Like, is it some kind of scavenger hunt you can make? Is there like a thing you can set up on the beach? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
what is the audio intervention that you can have, right? And that stuff you do as it comes, but then you document it and it builds into the story of whatever the full event is that you're going to put on.
I love that. I want to ask you about Resonate and your background, Pitch Party, all this stuff too. Do you mind telling me about the early days of Resonate, and maybe sharing with me about I don't know, starting at ICA and kind of some of your story?
So, Resonate for me was a thing that I thought might be a good idea, which is to say that I thought it might be cool to have a podcast festival of some kind at my institution. But it became real whenever we got a grant that funded it. And so it went from being a kind of a byline in a proposal to being like, oh, hey, actually, we have to do this and we've got to start now. You know what I mean? So it was like, I think we got the grant in like February or March. And so then we had to do the festival, right? Like that fall. You know what
Wow,
I'm saying?
it's quick.
Yeah, but the idea, or what I thought it was at the beginning, is that well, first off, I'm a academic person, you know, and I had spent so much of my life as an academic going to just the most boring conferences you can imagine that were full of the smartest people in the world who bored you to tears, right? And I was like, it can't be necessary. It can't be a necessary condition that a conference is boring. Like, surely it's possible for there to be fun at conferences. And so I wanted to design a conference that just like wasn't boring. um, and also I thought at the time that it would be a fairly regional affair. So, you know, I was envisioning that it would be like, you know, Virginia, Maryland, DC, the Carolinas, maybe. Like that's what I kind of figured would be the main audience. But I would pull these people from all over to present. So I would bring like the kind of the national kind of flavor of podcasting, specifically narrative podcasting, to my local audience. And the first year went pretty well. I mean, we were just like giving away tickets and like begging people to come in the door, but it was a pretty good showing of people, and they had a lot of fun. And toward the end of it, I thought, okay, well, that was a pretty good experiment. Maybe funding dependent, we can do this every other year or something like that. But the initial response to Resonate was actually quite strong. And very quickly, people convinced us that we should just do it every year. And so that's pretty much how we got started with this ridiculous festival.
Well, I know, as I already mentioned, Emily just had a great time, and she was, just buzzing before and after. Buddy of mine, Dane Cardiel, who I've known after having worked at a couple of different companies now with Good Tape, um, was there? Can you explain maybe a little bit more of what he was announcing and kind of is there a partnership there? Or
Yes. So Dane was at even the first Resonate, I think.
oh,
So
was he
like,
really? Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So he was a believer from like very early on, and he came out, and I think that the first time that Good Tape was like widely available was at Resonate.
Cool.
Yeah, and so the thing is that I always wanted to have a business thing at Resonate, but I knew that I wasn't the one to do it, and I knew that it would have to be its own thing, right? And so then we had been talking about doing more stuff because we always partner in some way, like every year. But then finally, Dana was like, "I've got it. We'll do this like business summit. I'll run it, the whole vibe." And so then Dane put on Fast Follow Summit, which took place the day before Resonate this year, and it was this very interesting kind of event where some people who were maybe kind of tangential to podcasting and some other kind of experts and stuff got together to talk about the business in I would say like a very fresh way in like a new environment. And I think that the feedback from Fast Follow kind of bears that out. Like people definitely enjoyed it, and you should for sure roll up to it next year, wherever it happens, probably in Richmond.
That's great to hear that went well. And Dane's been a guest on this podcast, and I just been hearing your name here and there. But then when this Pitch Party podcast, crossed my desk, proverbial desk
Mm-hmm.
from Andrea from Tank, I was like, okay, now's the like if we can get to you and get you on the show, I would love to talk to you about that podcast. Can you just give me fill me in a little bit more on what that's all about?
At the festival, we do an event called the Pitch Party. Yeah. It's sponsored by our local NPR station, Virginia Public Media, and it is effectively a Shark Tank style contest.
It's
We do
cool.
like a national call out, we get 3 finalists, and then those finalists present their shows in front of judges, in front of the crowd at Resonate. Now, the winner of this contest gets like $10,000, right? So it's a really cool, fun thing. It's got stakes. Okay, I say it's fun. It's fun for the audience.
Pressure.
Yeah, the finalists they feel some pressure sometimes, but the whole idea of the pitch party, and in truth, one of the guiding lights of Resonate is like, how do we help people who are making storytelling shows? How do we get them support, right? How do we help them find support? And so then what we learned is that, okay, the pitch party is fun, and you pitch and then you win and you get money, etc. But like actually what ends up happening is that you're kind of pitching the room. Like whoever's in the room gets to hear what you're up to. And they might be interested in your show, or they might know someone who can introduce you to the person that's going to help you get the thing made, right? And this was like very clear last year when our pitch party winner, Helena DeGroat, pitched her show, Creation Myth, and the CBC was in the room. And the CBC was like, this is pretty good, actually. We want to like work with you. We want to release this show on the CBC. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so then we're like, oh, wait a minute. Well, if you make your pitch public enough, then you might actually be able to find support. This is the theory, right? And so then that's what became Pitch Party, the podcast. We take the pilots from various people who are making excellent narrative-driven audio, and we put them on the feed along with a little interview where they talk about their thing and what they need. And then, we use that to maybe try and get them some introductions so that they can meet people and generally get out there to find some support, as opposed to that thing, which I know that happens, where you have a pilot and you're just kind of working on it and toiling in secret and kind of quietly shopping it around. It's like, well, what if we publicly shopped it around? What are the possibilities then?
That's really cool. No, I love that. Flipping it on its head. I mean, I think like the private backroom deals, they're just like there's so few as the industry evolves these days. I mean, it's also the economy,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I mean, so like to give it to go public, like why not go public at this point?
Yeah, it's like it's why not? And also sometimes you need a bit of hype, you know?
Yeah, I
And it's
dig
like, well,
that.
you can only create hype publicly. So we maybe need to be a bit more public about, the things that we're proposing.
It's interesting you say that, and just I'll double click on that for a second because so often in my podcasting experience, I worked at TuneIn before starting this company 7 years ago, and we were always, I was always like anti-hype, is what I would say, because the thought process was if there's nothing for people to go to and click and then listen to, then why would you even mention it? So until there's, I mean, in the beginning, and I guess even now it's like 2 or 3 episodes or something for people to listen to, then there's like some meat on the bone for people to like chew on, and therefore, yes, then you promote something. But yeah, I think that's kind of coming back. I know that's more like movies, like Barbie. We were hearing about it for a year before it came out, right?
Yeah,
With
yeah, yeah, yeah.
music, hype is a thing for sure. But now it seems like with podcasting, that's a more of a thing than it was.
Maybe that's true. I just think that attention is so weird, right? Like you can't really tell what's going on. And sometimes the best barometer of whether a thing has the right attention is if you can perceive any hype around it, right? Because you could
Mm.
spend all the money that you want on advertising and that all could come to nothing. Or you could start a rumor. You know what I mean? And then if people start to ask you about it, you're like, you know what? I think the news is getting around. You know what I'm saying?
That's so real. Oh my goodness. This is great. I want to keep going. I have just a couple things to wrap up. But so this year's Resonate, the theme was Pangea,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Celebrating podcast creators from all around the world. Um, I'm curious, why do you think this was the right time to kind of bring that global perspective? And maybe the softball is like, what does next year look like in terms of expansion potentially?
You talk about the right time. I always feel like I'm a year behind any given thing. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the thing that I'm doing any given year to me seems like the thing that I should have done the year before. You know what I mean? But I think that I had just, well, personally, I've been thinking about this question of influence. And it's like if you go to people in movies, when they talk about their influences, they name these like weird, obscure foreign films, right? And it's the same thing for people in music, like musicians. They're like, oh, have you heard this band out of, North Africa, right? Like everyone that is in the arts has this super transnational kind of, influential influence thing. And they have these reference points from all over the world. In audio, that's like less so because of the language kind of barrier. And I just thought, well, there's probably a lot to learn if we start thinking about the various nations, right? And this, so this is like the people around the world, but it's also like, what about the nations within? What about the subcultures, of America? What about like indigenous people? Like what's going on over there? And so the idea of Pangea was to ask the question of what lessons could we get from these various corners that maybe we don't often summon all together at a podcast festival. And a lot of it, I would say, was inspired by the work of Eleanor McDowell, who does Radio Atlas, which is like the lone podcast translation, website that's out there, right? And so, thankfully, she was available to do the opening session at the festival, and it was fantastic.
I appreciate that. And in terms of the future and expansion, possibly 2 events next year.
Next year, 2026, the festival will be about trust, empathy, persuasion in audio. So, like, we're trying to address, let's say, the crisis of trust in journalism, like all the AI slop and the,
Oh,
that
yeah.
kind of stuff.
Oof.
So that's the focal point. And I'm still kind of working out how to frame it and all that. But generally speaking, we'll be talking about the task of persuasion in audio. And then in 2027, there'll probably be 2 resonates. So the first will be in Richmond, as always. I think that the theme for that year is climate. But we're also working with our partners at Radio Workshop to potentially do a festival in Cape Town early 2027. So that's still in motion. It looks pretty good. Late February 2027. Keep your calendar open.
I would love to go. My partner and I have been talking about a South Africa trip, and that would be really special. But hey, I don't want to wait that long. I'd love to join you in Virginia for 2026. So very cool to talk to you. It's nice when the buzz matches the individual and the conversation that we're having. So
I don't know about all that.
Yeah, good stuff. So thanks for the time. And I just mentioned to the listeners, stick around to hear a trailer for Chioke's new podcast, Pitch Party. And when you're ready to listen, you can find a link to the show in the episode's show notes. Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Next Chapter. I'm your host, JT. Our executive producer is Emily Reeves. This is edited by Justin Cortese. And we drop episodes bi-weekly. Please follow the show, and thanks for listening.
Resonate Podcast Festival and Tink Media present Pitch Party, a party of 5 podcast pilots for you to hear before they become a thing. Producers can spend years shopping their shows around and trying to find support for their creative vision. Well, we're uploading the mixtape so you and the execs can discover the next great show at the same time. Find Pitch Party wherever you get your podcasts.